Well, I want us to pick up where we were on Sunday. We looked at that passage where Jesus said to his disciples, "Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows, but take heart. I have overcome the world." And one thing we talked about was that every one of us, either ourselves or someone we love, is going through a storm of some sort. Here on earth you will have many trials and sorrows. But what about you today? What tempts you to lose heart? Specifically, what's going on in your life today or this week? Um, what is it that tempts you to be discouraged, to feel like giving up? The Apostle Paul, and he's the superstar kind of, of being a Christian in the New Testament, but he was tempted to lose heart. He actually said in 2 Corinthians 4:16, he says, "We do not lose heart." He talks about all the suffering and trials that he has, and yet he says, but we don't lose heart. We don't give up. We don't faint, it says in King James, even though our outer person is decaying or wasting away. There's all kinds of things that cause us to lose heart, and our physical bodies are one thing, isn't it? I mean, it's when we get sick, when we get old, there's things that just don't go right, and it's easy to be tempted to just lose heart, to give up, to live in discouragement. but but what tempts your heart the most? I wish we could talk, if we were in discussion, and we'll do this with our Wednesday night group at the church. But I'd like to hear what are some of the areas in life that that tempt you to lose heart, to be discouraged, to feel like giving up. Life has a way of not working out the way we hoped it would. There's unanswered prayers, things that just, it seemed like God didn't come through for us. It seems that way. A broken relationship, a shattered dream. Um, Either somebody in your own life, yourself, or somebody close to you, somebody that you love. But how do you keep from losing heart? How do we keep from losing heart? I want to just read you just a brief section from Pilgrim's Progress. This is an updated modern day version of it, but there's one point where this guy named Christian, he's on his way to the celestial cities, on his way to heaven, and along the way he comes to the house of the interpreter, and the interpreter takes Christian into a room where there's a fire burning in a fireplace. A man stood by it, throwing buckets of water on the fire, trying to put it out, but the fire continued to burn higher and hotter. Christian asked, "What does this mean?" The interpreter answered, "The fire is the work of grace that's been ignited in your heart. The man trying to extinguish it with water is the devil. But even with all his effort, the fire continues to burn higher and hotter. Let me show you why." Then the interpreter took Christian behind the wall of the fireplace, where there was another man holding a container of oil, secretly throwing the oil on the fire. "Who is this man?" Christian asked. The interpreter replied, "This is Christ, who continually pours on the oil of grace to maintain the work of grace already begun in your heart. His grace ignites the soul of his people like a roaring fire, and despite the devil's best efforts, that fire will never be extinguished. Even when we're tempted, Christ is there with us, doing his work of supplying all the grace we need to stand firm." Well, now you could say that's a great picture, isn't it, of what God has done and continues to do in our lives. Just the amazing grace of God. And that's God's part. God doesn't give up on us. Scripture says, "He who began a good work in you will continue it and perfect it even to the day of Christ when we see Jesus face to face. But God's part, He's faithful to His part. Our response to that is we need to believe when Jesus said, in this world, you're going to have many trials and sorrows, but take heart because I have overcome the world. I need to believe that, trust Him in that, take heart that He has a way of turning things around completely in ways I can't ever imagine. I want to end with reading what Paul said there in this is 2 Corinthians chapter 4 verses 16 to 18. It says this, familiar passage. Therefore, we do not lose heart. We do not give up. Even though our outer person is being destroyed, yet our inner person is being renewed day by day. For our momentary light affliction is producing for us an absolutely incomparable eternal weight of glory. So we do not focus on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal. What's the unseen going on in our lives? It's Jesus pouring the oil of His grace into our hearts, keeping the fire of that work of grace flaming up and hot and burning. And we trust Him, His power, and continually we come back and say, Lord, I am not able. Apart from you, I can do nothing. Actually, if you look back at verse 7 in that same chapter, 2 Corinthians chapter 4, it says that we have this treasure, the presence of God, Christ in us, the hope of glory, Christ in us. We have this treasure in earthen vessels, in jars of clay. Somebody said we're a bunch of crackpots, but hey, it's wonderful because of the treasure that we have. And it goes on to say, so that the extraordinary power may be from God and not from ourselves. So take heart. Though we have many things going on around us, and that person you've been praying for, or that issue in your own life, take heart, Jesus says, because I have overcome the world. He has risen from the dead, and that same resurrection power is at work in your life and in mine if you know Jesus. Let's rejoice in that and spend some time just giving thanks to God for His grace and His mercy in that. Take care.